Welcome to the City Council Workshop for the City of Laurel, Tuesday, May 6th, 2025. Citizens may address the council regarding any item of city business that is not on tonight's agenda. The duration of the individual speaking under the public input is limited to 3 minutes. Name and address, please.
Hello, good evening. My name is Jean Kerr, and I live at 1128 9th Avenue in Laurel. And I have come basically to ask for guidance or whatever as far as clarification for the wage of the judge this next term. This is the last year of my term. I will have been judge in Laurel for 28 years. And when I went down to the county courthouse to get the paperwork to sign up and stuff, I noticed that the wage has gone down to 35,000. So I am inquiring to see how that would affect me as far as election goes, because in the past, when I've asked for wage increase, then I'm told after the election. 4 years ago, when I came after the election and asked for wage increase, I was told you ran at that wage and we're not going to talk about it. In the past, I've also brought up that I think it would only be fair if there was a base wage and then a person got longevity and the wage increase that is cost of living. And I'm on that matrix that has been talked about that is silly and it's not fair. And so I just wanted to clarify that for myself as well as anybody else who wants to run for the position of city judge. So can that be answered tonight, or who would I talk to who is making the decisions as far as that for the judicial position at this point?
Well, I don't know how it's set up on the county, on the ballot.
Oh,
When I sent the information, Actually, Kurt and I were just talking about this last week. When I sent the information over to the county, I sent them the information for the wards. And then I sent them for the judge's information and I said, see matrix. So if there's a judge that, if we stay on that matrix and there's a judge that's never been a judge, they would be at year 1. Obviously, Jean, you have been, and if you decide to go forward and be reelected, you would be whatever the matrix says, which would make you, what, 28 or 29 years? I don't know what you just said.
20.
So that
I
would be-
start 29, but my question though is I was told before that it's this wage I ran for, and I had to quit asking for raises because that's what I agreed to. And so if that, which would be on the record 4 years ago, is what it is, then I don't know. And we've also talked about that matrix not being fair. It doesn't even give cost of living. And so I just wanted to know, because I really think that this is a discussion that should be clarified as far as the policy for someone, whether I'm elected or someone else, and looking at something beyond the matrix. At one time, we were talking about it and everything was, this is the way it is. But then there was another time later on that was clarified that that it really was not a fair matrix. And I think that this needs to be discussed before election, because I don't think it's fair for someone to walk in and have all of the question. So who would I speak to or whatever to talk about this so that there is some form of security knowing what lays ahead, no matter who gets elected?
CAO Markey Garden.
Okay, and then would come back and talk, because I do think that it's something that everybody, I gotta be honest with you, at this salary base, I even wondered if this was some form of thought process as far as all the allegations and stuff that happened last year. Nobody's ever been told that I was vindicated of everything, and that it was deemed that all of the complaints and stuff that went against me were totally unfounded. That hasn't been out for the public, so I was also wondering if this was also part of that. Because it was also told to me before in the past that there would be a setup to where I would not be wanting to run again. So I just came to clarify and see if we can get something going that is fair for the future. Thank you.
Okay, under general items, we have the Poppy Day proclamation. That gets read next week. Anybody have any questions on the Poppy Day proclamation? Municipal Summit 2025. That's that right there. Did you? Yeah, Kurt,
Yeah,
you,
this is-
you
so-
went by.
The reason I wanted this on the agenda is because we get a lot of emails, city staff, the mayor, city council members. And I think the reason I want it on the agenda when we get these notifications like this is to announce that there's a municipal summit for the council members. So if you get it in your emails, I'm sure you probably did, if you're in the email link for Montana Leagues of Cities and Towns and MMIA, they should have your emails. But if you're not on the email, these come in as a municipal summit. This year, it's in Red Lodge. So it's not too far away to drive up and go attend that. We had it, I think just 2 years ago, or last year, it was in Laurel. And so we had one in Laurel, but it's a good example or an easy way to go up and drive up to Red Lodge for the day, go have lunch, attend the municipal summit, and registration is open right now, I believe, for June. I already registered to go up there. And it's a good way just to keep a refresher on what's going on in the legislature. So we just had a legislation session end, and we should probably just keep up on that. And so if council members want to go, we can post that. If we know there's going to be attendance of more than 5, we can sit there and announce the council is attending a summit. We can post that on the door, no city business, but we need to know how many members are willing to go so that make sure that there, if you do have a quorum there, it's properly posted and that no action will be taken while you're attending the summit.
What's the date?
Yeah, July 10th.
Nico.
So it's just to get some feedback. If you want to attend and you want to do that, get us some numbers. We can even help you register if you want. We can help you register for that. Put your name down. And then I don't know if we could use the city bus to bus people up there, but yeah, do a road trip, Kager, and anyway, but I just want to make sure that you guys, your council members and the mayor and the city attorney and everyone's aware that the summit is going on, and it's a good one-day refresher training, so.
Thanks, Mayor. Just to follow up on what Kurt said, I've talked about these, and I know several people attended last year. I've talked about these summits before that are put on by the MMIA. It's a great free resource that they provide for us. This year, and I'm actually headed tomorrow for the remainder of the week to the Tilliston MMIA conference, which is the city attorney conference. I know council members have attended different ones that the MMIA puts on too. But there's 2 topics on this particular summit this year that I think would be really informative for council that the MMIA is really going to focus on. And we've had discussions circulating amongst city attorneys about this. One is the work comp program issues, because there's a lot of development going on with the work comp program with the MMIA and how some of the members are looking at work comp in relationship to the MMIA carrying that coverage versus the state fund. So there will be a lot of discussion about that, and the MMIA will be able to answer a lot of questions about that. And then the other significant one is the legislative updates. Obviously, we're in a legislative year. There's been a lot of stuff that has happened this year as it relates to municipal governance. So I think that will be really informative. So just like Kurt said, I'd really encourage anyone who's able to make it to be able to attend this particular summit because of just even those 2 topic areas. Plus, it's a great opportunity just to ask questions of our risk retention pool that helps provide us a lot of protection from a liability standpoint.
Councilmember Canopy.
Thank you. I want to say the same thing. It was the first interaction for me as starting. And the best part of all that was meeting the people and then the follow-up. So you kind of knew who was there, and then they actually came and talked to us. And that's huge. It was an eye opener for what to expect and what to do. So it was, they accepted us, and, you know, it was really good as far as that goes. But it opens your eyes to what's going on and all the people that are involved in all the different steps. But thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Moving on, we're going to go to executive review. Under Public Works, we have a resolution of intent to increase the city of Laurel's water and wastewater rates and changes to become effective on July 10th, 2025, and setting a date and time for a public rate hearing. Clerk Treasurer Wood has some things to say.
So back when we set the public hearing, what was it? November? We got that all together and it was only for 1 year. The rate study that we had done by Raftellus was actually for 5 years. So what we want to do is we want to get a public hearing and pass these the service of rates for the water and sewer for a 5-year period, so that every year we don't have to come back and say, okay, it's time to raise the rates again when we have a 5-year plan. Now, I will tell you that what we have included in your packet tonight is a rough draft. Kurt and I were reviewing today, and we need a little bit of clarification from Raftellus before we make this our final document. So this might be adjusted just a little bit. So this isn't set in stone as of tonight. We're waiting for just a little bit of clarification from the company that did our rate study before we make this a final copy. So I just want to let you know that this is just simply a rough draft. But these were the proposed rates that were in the rate study that you guys had looked at, where they came, talked about. Nothing has changed as far as what they had told us. So this is what that document is.
Questions? We should have that ironed out by next week, and we'll have that in time for you to review it before next council meeting. Council issues, boards, committees, commissions, recommendation process discussion. You want to handle this? You brought it up.
Okay. Well, I want to get right to the addressing the city council. When I looked into a recommendation to put something on an agenda, that was a request. Came out and it had a question mark on the end of it and said, hey, can we move this, an item coming out of Public Works Committee onto the full council? What I did the next day, I took that email to heart. I started working on it and say, okay, what do we do? How do we make that process happen for that request? And going through it, I always referred to the red book as my Bible. I go back into the Bible and I look at it and go, okay, how does this happen? And when I reviewed it, the ordinance that created the Public Works Committee, the Budget Finance Committee, the Emergency Services, and the Human Relations Committee, I think there's 4 committees that were created in 1999. It just says that in that there'll be no more than 4 council members on it. That's it. There's no discussion on how you move recommendations out of those committees actually to the council or what they're actually supposed to do. Now, I've sat on that Public Works Committee since 2007 and thought that was very beneficial as the previous Public Works Director. Sat with a lot of members of the public on that and council members that served on that. But when you were serving on those boards, you are no longer a council member, you are a board member of the Public Works Committee, and how that is situated and how you operate. So I went in and I asked the city clerk treasurer, can you please give me the resolution on how that's supposed to work? And she goes, I don't know if there's one. And I went to our council secretary or administrative assistant, Brittany, and I said, hey, can you give me that resolution on how that's supposed to operate? Because I'm looking at it as an outsider, trying to make the request happen, because that's what I'm tasked with. Let's make this happen. Always say yes. always move forward. So I started looking into it and I was like, well, there is no guidance in the LMC on how to move that from the Public Works Committee. So my question is back to Councilmember Sparks on, as the member of that, where's the guidance that you would have, or anyone teach you how to make what the Public Works Committee is supposed to do? I guess that's a question that I would have. I'm not sure how that happens, but I've gone back through and I've read how the Budget Finance was committee, and I went over the last 4 decades or 5 decades. And it seems like as staff changed, what the Budget Finance Committee reviewed changed. And so the Public Works Committee, and I sat on it, so I was a part of that. I mean, I didn't sit on it. It says I can't even sit on it. By the LMC, it says staff cannot sit on the board. So we're advisors, but it doesn't even say the advisors have to show up for the meeting. So I'm trying to sit there and say, ask these committees that are on those 4 specific ones, because we have a park board that's in LMC and it says what the function is. And we have a cemetery commission and that says what that commission is supposed to do. And we have a tree board that says that's what you're supposed to do, inventory of trees. And so those are specific things. But if we go into the LMC section for just standing committees, there's no guidance. So I was wondering if any of you who've chaired emergency services, the Public Works Committee, Budget Finance, if you've ever given guidance on how you are supposed to operate and what are your guidelines and what are your things that you're supposed to have on your agendas, how the minutes are supposed to be. Because I'm trying to make things happen for you. So that, I guess that's a question for Councilmember Sparks.
Yeah, so I know on committee, so if we're talking Public Works specifically, I know when you were the Public Works Director and I was just on the committee, and past Councilmember Eaton was the chair on there. Anything that was discussed at the committee meeting that we felt should go before the entire council as a discussion. In the past, we had just voted on that. Like, is that committee in favor of moving that, or asking for that to be moved to the whole council? And if the committee was in favor of that, then it was asked that it move to the full council, which is why that email was sent after the committee meeting a couple weeks ago.
Mhm.
That's it. That's how it's operated. Not saying right, wrong, whatever. That's how it operated before when I first came on. And that's kind of how it transitioned to me when I took over as the chair.
And that's the discussion I want you to think about when you sit there, and I'm looking at it as like clear vision, no history. And so I looked at it and said, okay, how can we make this request happen? That's what I wanted to do. Let's make this request happen. And what authority can I make this happen and make it justifiable? So reviewing the ordinances, and then, okay, let's look at that ordinance creation in 1999. So I looked into it. And I found that we had a lot of standing committees. I think 10 of them or 11, I haven't done the count. But there was a fire committee, a police committee, a parks committee, a street and alley committee, an insurance committee, and they had all these committees. And there's a letter that Larry McCann sent the future Public Works Board, Public Works Committee, that says, hey, I want to reduce the number of meetings I'm attending. And I want to create a Public Works Committee out of the Park Board, out of the Street and Alley Committee. And so they got a hold of the city attorney, and the city attorney wrote a new ordinance based upon a staff member wanting a not as busy schedule in the evenings. He wanted a reduction, and he wrote in his letter, it's a personal benefit to me not having attend so many meetings. So they took these 11 and they created 4. So tonight I had a meeting with our city attorney and I said, hey, just to let you know, here's the things that I'm seeing. And how do we talk to the council about what those boards are supposed to be doing and what their authority is? So whether it's budget finance, emergency services, I want to make sure that when you come in on those nights, once a month, that it's actually important what you do. I've always said it's great that citizens are doing that. But where is it that we even have rules or regulations or bylaws, or do you elect a chair? Do you elect a vice chair? Because we're doing it. So there's nothing, it's silent on that. So we're doing it anyway, and it's not necessarily wrong. The city attorney said, well, that's not necessarily wrong. It comes to the point where you're actually now trying to take action. And there is no rules or regulations. There's no bylaws of the committee. There's none of that. And so I wanted to just look, and so I asked today to get copies from the last 5 decades from budget finance and how staff members change. So I asked for just 1 month from each city clerk treasurer since 1985. And I went through the tenure of that city clerk treasurer and how they prepared an agenda for budget finance. And then the next city or the next city clerk treasurer and the next city clerk treasurer and the next city clerk treasurer. And what we have today is nothing reflective of 1985, your agendas. Originally in 1985, there was no public comment. Now there's a public comment section on your agenda. And I think that's open meeting laws. You're supposed to have that, but it doesn't say for budget finance. That's for the council to have that rule. And it could be say all boards and commissions are to have open record law and a public comment. I think that's probably state statute. But our Laurel Municipal Code doesn't even stipulate state statute. You must follow that in those boards. So the question it comes down to is how do we accommodate that if we can? How does the council rectify that situation where maybe it's just passed along, that passed along belief that this is how we operate? And I want to solidify that in something that we can actually see and verify. And without that verification, I'm not sure how we're supposed to move it forward. So I had real heartache having to have the conversation with the mayor and the city attorney and the city clerk and say, hey, how do we fix this? I mean, do you see a problem? And I think everyone agreed with me that there's a problem. So let's fix that. And so the discussion tonight is, I've got all the research that I've done here, and I could hand that all out to you. But how the Public Works Committee started, and it's just a simple letter from Larry McCann. And they held a public hearing to change the thing. There was no opposition. There was no proponents. There was no opponents. I found one workshop minutes that just said Gay Easton, Councilmember Gay Easton gave a report on updated boards. That's it. There's no discussion. So it comes to the point where if we're going to keep these boards going, and the tree boards has struggled to get members, and the park board, and we're trying to combine that, and they have their set rules, and we have that, we're modifying them. I had a meeting with Vice President Wilkie and Councilmember Mize here on last week. Yeah, last week. And we actually discussed how park board and tree board are going to interact as a combined group. And it was very fruitful. They got a lot of feedback. I can take that feedback, send it over to the city attorney. We can modify that, and then we can take it to the full. And I think they did take it to the full park board. You guys took it to the park board meeting and you discussed those changes. And I got feedback from Matt Wheeler the next day and said, hey, they're all good with it. Let's move it forward. But we had some edits. So that's a great way to work through something. What we don't have is budget finance, emergency services, public works, and human relations. We don't have anything like that. And so I think I just wanted to point it out to you tonight. I would like to allow time for me and the city attorney and the mayor to discuss that, and maybe the council president, on how we are, maybe have that discussion on how we can move things forward, how you can make recommendations and who the recommendations are to. Is it to the full council or is it to the mayor? The charter stipulates that the mayor has the power to oversee staff. And the last thing I want staff to do is go to these meetings, get directed by a committee. They are then going out and doing something the committee is saying, hey, we should do. And then the mayor comes in and goes, what are you doing? And discipline that person for doing something that reports to the mayor. So there's the fine balance about putting people in a situation where the committee wants to do an action that staff members sitting at the meeting and acts upon that and then subjects himself to discipline. And I don't want that to happen.
So I'm gonna clarify something because only half of the council is in that meeting. So the request was to move, okay, so when we had our Public Works Committee meeting back on the 21st of April, we had discussed West Railroad project and the fact that that has been delayed yet again by the state and is now looking to be a 2028 project, I think is when they're anticipating that. Matt had mentioned that he would like to do some additional projects. So this, I want to clarify what you just said, Kurt.
Okay.
This was absolutely not the committee directing Matt to do anything. This was a recommendation that Matt had come up with to the committee saying, there's other projects that we could be doing in this interim.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see if we can move forward with any of those. The email I sent was not directing any staff
Right.
to do anything. It was an email specifically to the mayor, the city attorney, you, and Brittany as the ones who control the agenda for council. And it had the other committee members for Public Works included on that as well, so that they knew that I had made that request after the Public Works meeting. So just want to clarify what's actually being talked about and what actually took place at that
Yeah.
meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't get
So
the
the
background.
email was simply asking if that could be put on a future council workshop for the council to discuss if that's even something that can move forward.
Right.
So just for clarification, there
Yeah.
was no staff direction from the committee or individual council members.
No, I get that. And I should have done the background. I'm sorry I didn't do the background on what the request was. But the request came and like I said, I want to take that seriously and make the request because I do truly believe in committees. I really do. And people come in here once a month, sit down, they take their time out of their busy schedules as individuals, not as council members also, but the people that sit on those boards are taking their private time away from their families or their whatever they want to do in their lives. And they're coming in and I want to make that time that they come in valuable. And that's the point. Let's make it valuable if we're going to have those committees. Make sure that what they are actually doing, they have purpose, they have direction, and they have something that they can ask as a committee member. Where is it in paper that I can see that what we're supposed to be operating under? What are my rules, my regulations? And that's what I would like to clarify with the city attorney, with the council, and discuss that because council created this ordinance in 99. And what has found is there's not one person in here from 1999. So it was a different legislative body, different city attorneys. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 different city attorneys. We've had 4 or 5 different council presidents. We've had 4 different mayors or 5 different mayors, 6 different mayors. And now what we thought that the Public Works Committee was put together for is now totally in a different realm because we don't have any set of rules. I asked for the resolution that authorizes the Public Works Committee to do what they should do and can't find any. It was never adopted. They just adopted an ordinance and everything went forward and all of a sudden you're electing a chair and vice chair, you're calling meetings and you would have to do that because you got to have a chair, right? But there's nothing written down that says you'll vote on it and when you do it. So then what also happened is when the charter changed, it stipulated that all the LMC needs to be recodified. And I think we did that. We went through a recodification of the entire LMC and it said, well, the laws that are in place are not absolutely obliterated. You're going to operate under that chart or those rules until the LMC is recodified. And they did that. They went through recodification and readopted all the ordinances. And so they went through that process. So with that, I'm asking for some time to really divulge into that and see what we can actually do and work with the committees. And I've asked the city attorney, we briefed it over today. And I said, as CAO, should I even brought this forward or should I just continue on as normal? And I see some errors in the way we have operated. And I would like to get clarification and finality so that we can make those, if you guys have a recommendation come out of committee and you're working with staff to do that, that all of a sudden it can happen. And it can happen for these reasons. And what I'm missing is, how can it happen? What are the reasons for it to happen? And I appreciate that the committee wants to see something done, and I appreciate the Public Works Director wanting to get something done. I think every citizen in Laurel wants something done. And just how we prioritize it, how we get it going about doing it, so.
Councilmember Mize.
Thank you very much. So is it the kind of thing where those committees that are missing some of those ordinances, resolutions, we could have CEO Mark Guard and maybe the attorney come present to one of our meetings, and part of our meeting agenda for the month could be setting some of that up?
Actually, your city attorney we're brainstorming, and she actually came up with that idea that says, hey, listen, let's put it out to the committees and see what you guys want to do. Let's get some feedback on what you actually want to accomplish and what those committees should be doing. And then we could review that, but give it back to the committee to decide on how to formulate these things, because bylaws typically are created on a committee or a board, and they create bylaws, and then they agree to those bylaws, and then you send those bylaws back to the council, and the council goes, hey, we agree with your bylaws. If we make a change to the cemetery in how we dig graves or whatever else, it goes through cemetery commission and it goes on to the full council for approval of that policy. If it's a policy thing in Public Works or Public Works standards, we want the committee to sit there and say, it's our task to review engineering firms. It's our task to review scheduled projects. Let's get that in writing so that we actually have something that you can read. And so as we change council members, and you win or you lose elections, and we get new people coming in, that they can have something to look at and just say, oh, this is what it means to be on Public Works Committee. Now, Parks Board has that. Cemetery Commission has that. Tree Board had that. And we're missing Parks, Budget Finance, and Emergency Services. So I don't want to sit there and go blindly into the future and go, let's just continue that. So I'm reaching out to the committee members that are on those and the people that would serve on those committees as chairs, because I think that we had a tree board committee and the chairperson wasn't actually a council member, right? It was a general member of the public. And if you go back into the LMC, it says the mayor will appoint people to those boards, but it doesn't say how many members. So right now, I asked Brittany, I go, how many people serve on Public Works? Well, we only have one vacancy. Who set the vacancy number? Who set the number of people? Because in the code, there's no limit. You could have 30 people. So who sets it? The mayor, because he doesn't appoint anybody. And then the council. So the code only stipulates 4. And can I hand that out? Would you like me to hand out the ordinance that was created in 1999? I think it just helps the visual to see what that ordinance was.
Why, you said that they merged, what, emergency services, Public Works, and budget and finance under one committee before? Why did they bring it back to individual committees then, Kurt?
There were,
If it was working,
to answer your question, Mayor, there were about 15, I'm using the term, or roughly 15 previous committees that then got merged into those 4 committees, one of whom doesn't actually exist. So before there was like parks, street, whole bunch of ones. And the mayor at the time decided instead of having the 15 different committees, it was going to be brought down to these 4. And then those 4 were codified in the LMC. One is not even a committee that we utilize within Laurel. And the other 3, as Kurt mentioned, do not have any sort of specificity in the code about what their duties or responsibilities are or methods of operation.
This one didn't exist.
I would like to say the budget finance The budget finance has power based upon the purchasing policy that the council created. So they created a purchasing policy that stipulated how staff, the mayor, and who approves purchase requisitions. So that's a purchasing policy. The budget finance, actually, they have a resolution. So of all the boards, budget finance actually has a resolution on purchasing. But it doesn't say anything about claims. It doesn't say anything about payroll register. There's nothing. I can't find it. And I think that's important for you to review it. It's the city's health and financial, but there's nothing says that you have to do it. You just may do it. And so Mayor, did you have a question on this then?
No.
Okay.
Before all of these got consolidated down into the four, did any of these previous have any sort of standing rules or guidance or anything like that that just got lost when we consolidated them? And by we, I mean like the council 26 years ago? Just for clarification.
Right? No, go
If
ahead.
they existed, it's never been in any format codified or passed through any sort of resolution.
Like an
So,
LMC or any.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
nothing discussing in any respect from council approval what those previous boards even looked like, let alone the four that then were consolidated.
Okay.
So I think, that's how we identified this particular issue and the need to address it. And my preference actually is, and Kurt and I discussed this at length, my preference actually is that boards and committees do not actually have resolutions that are approved as to their operational issues, because the difficulty becomes if anyone has to go from a legal standpoint to reviewing these things, they're looking at both what's codified by way of ordinances in our code, but then also having to search through resolutions. And we have searchable mechanisms for our resolutions, but it without some level of legal knowledge for a lot of people, especially lay people that might be interested in serving on these boards and committees, it could be cumbersome to figure out those things. So I think what we've recognized is there's just an enormous gap that exists in our code as it relates to three very important committees that exist.
Council Vice President Wilkie.
Yes, thank you. My question is, there's a difference between a resolution and a motion, correct? So answer that for me first.
A resolution can be passed by way of a motion, if that motion then is approved by council. So the motion is the formal action taken by city council to approve or not approve a resolution.
So where I'm going here is some of the things that, say, the park board specifically has recommended with the advice and guidance from our public works director was forwarded to the mayor, and I think basically a motion. Am I right, Richard, when we've done that? So it wasn't a resolution, it was a motion that the committee took to recommend to the mayor. So the chair made that recommendation most always in the email to him, and then most generally he responded. So we're okay if we do that. I think you're telling me that. If not, correct me, please.
I think procedurally, and Kurt and I discussed this at length too, procedurally, we do need to get fleshed out the rules by which our boards and committees operate. Because one, my concern is, and we had this discussion, it may be different from board to board, which is not great. We don't want an inconsistency in how these things are presented to the mayor for a potential agenda item. But more specifically, whether or not motions are even required at these meetings is a question, because our code sections are silent on it. What rules of order even govern how these committees operate? Some of the provisions do, and as we've worked through combining the Park and Tree Board and the changes that I drafted on the ordinance to that, and I know I have some follow-up with Kurt on that from the meeting this week. Some of the boards, like the Park and Tree Board, do have very specific codified sections about what the rights and responsibilities of the boards are. There's nothing in the code related to these other three really significant boards. So I think even the procedural issues we need to get fleshed out so that the boards and committees actually know how do we need to structure our meetings? And then as to any decision-making that might occur in that meeting, what should that look like then when it's passed on for potential council consideration?
Council President?
So while we're doing this too, I think one of the things that would be super helpful and important as we're fleshing all of this out, what exactly is the difference between a board, a commission, and a committee? Because like the tree board and the park board sound like they're the only two that have any sort of governing document. These other three that we're talking about are standing committees that are primarily made up, not entirely, but primarily made up of council members. So I think that would be super helpful as well to distinguish the difference.
I do know that the Cemetery Commission is operating on state statute as a commission where they are, I think Richard can probably, but they actually have some municipal code or some LMC, or not LMC, MCA code that says that what a cemetery is, and it's a commission. But if you're a city, you don't have to have a city cemetery. You don't have to provide that. Now, I think Rockville's not a city and there's a Rockville cemetery, and I don't know who actually does that, probably a county commissioner board or something that oversees that because they're not a city. But so I don't say that you even have to have a city cemetery. In fact, the cemetery of Laurel was actually created, it was private cemeteries. It was the Catholic section, Catholics ran that part. The Methodists have their own part of the cemetery. It was land that was for the burials of people, and then they deeded all that over to the city of Laurel. I think not even too long ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. They ceded it over to the city to run because the people in the church were changing over. And they didn't want to deal with it anymore. They wanted to deal with the city, and they would arrange the services, and the burials would then become reliant upon the taxpayers of Laurel to bury the people. And so that's what we did, and then maintain it for perpetual care. So that's what we agreed to when we allowed them to give us the deeds for the property. So yeah, I do know about the commission. It's LMC. Now the boards and committees, good question. I think it's a great question to find out what it means. My whole hope is that this discussion can lead into really look at the history, look at what Larry McCann wrote you. I handed you out, it's Public Works. And essentially he's got rid of they combined parks, street and alley, and public utilities into one meeting. Well, in 2005, I read the minutes here and they said, well, we don't have a park committee. What happened to the park committee? So the next mayor says, well, the park committee's not meeting. It's defunct. Well, right, because it got rolled into Public Works. But in 2005, they created a new ordinance called the Park Board. And what changed? Two mayors and two different city attorneys later, and all of a sudden we're creating a park board. And we created all the ordinances for the parks and Riverside Park and rules for South Pond. And they went in and did all these, what you're actually supposed to do. And that's a great understanding that if you look at something, you can say, this is what the park board is supposed to be doing. And here's the rules and regulations. And here's the policies you're supposed to adopt. And then you take that all to council for approval. So they actually had tasks assigned to them. I can't find the tasks for Public Works, Budget Finance, and Emergency Services. But I'd love to have you have that at your leisure to look at it and say, hey, this is how we're supposed to function. And then as you change and people come on from new members that are signing up for it, and then define, is it 30 members? It's whatever the mayor wants to do. Is it going to be 30 members on Public Works? It's going to be one council member. But in that ordinance, it says no more than 4. So are you guys setting it to where one council member is going to be on there? 2 council members are going to be on there? But the way we've done it is we just assume one council member's off, we put another one on, and there's a vacancy of council on it. And that's how it's been operating. But where's that in that ordinance that I just handed out that says that that's how you operate? Can't find it. So I think you'd want finality.
How does that work with library board and airport
separate.
authority. They want council to, or the mayor and council to appoint members. But do they have bylaws? Do they have?
They do. They're supposed to.
And as to those two boards, this actually goes to the discussion that, portion of the discussion that Kurt was mentioning. There are actually MCA sections that govern those two particular boards too. So as to these that contemplate have state statutory requirements, there's a lot more direction than on, operational issues for these boards. But as to the ones that we as a city have created ourselves that are not contemplated by state statute, where the gap exists that has been identified is the lack of real definition of roles, responsibilities, operational procedures.
Thank you. I just Googled that. The committee is a subgroup of a larger body, like a board, often formed to focus on a specific tasks or issues. A board, on the other hand, is a larger governing body which brought with broader responsibilities such as overseeing an organization's operations and direction. That's what Google says.
Councilmember Closey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a member of the public or the Budget Finance, when I first got on that committee, we had like 2 members from one ward on there. And in the last few years, we've had 1 member from each ward represent the Budget and Finance. And I think that's a good representation for our city government, is whatever we decide on that committee is to have 1 member from each ward serve on that committee. Thank you.
Anything else? We will have future discussion on that. Next, we go to document center training. Who has this?
Good evening, council again, Mayor. So we have been working on updates to our city website and allowing for the availability to search documents so that we give the power back to the people and to the council to go in and review your documents that you are adopting. And so you have it, instead of going through your email, you can go over to the city's website, and I will have Brittany fill you in on those changes.
So I'm sure not that long ago, you noticed that the agendas and minutes was no longer a big button on the bottom. We moved that over to the calendar, so you can still access that screen. It's a hyperlink there. But we also created our document center, which is access to most of the permanent records within our Laserfiche repository. In your packets, there is a little how to navigate, how you can search, how you can browse, how you can view the linked documents to be able to travel to different documents from a resolution to the minutes to help you interact. It is still a work in progress. It is based off of metadata. And we are still actively adding that. So we're starting on the newer ones and working our way back. But that is in your packets available for you and the public. Any questions?
Okay, she's available if later on you do have questions. So, other items? We need to start using city email. I know there's some people and department heads even that are getting correspondence for city business on their personal email, or they're sending it out. I noticed Park Board one came across. And it had a personal email attached to it. So I'm glad he's in the bathroom, so. But, when you write other board members and committee members or council members, or me or any staff, it should probably be through the city server when it's city business, so. That goes for department heads too. That's the ones that I've noticed it mostly. So it's not on you guys, but I wanted to say that out. Attendance at the upcoming meeting? You got another cast on?
Yeah, I had surgery.
Oh, that's right.
There's a senior appreciation night next Tuesday, and my daughter's a senior, so I'll be going to that.
Okay. Have fun. Vice President Wilkie?
Well, actually, I'm a step ahead here, announcements. This meeting here with the MMIA, I've been to one. I'd love to go to this one. However, the plans are right now, my grandson will be graduating from Marine Corps boot camp on the 11th of July.
Hoorah.
So I will be in San Diego. Thank you.
That is the best. I know you've been to one before, but when my boys were there, unbelievable, the parade. It's awesome. It will move you. So, Councilmember Canopy.
Yeah, I just want to let everyone know that we solved the campground reservations and got a new code, that QR code. That's been,
Thanks, Brittany.
yeah, thanks to Brittany, but it's all done. So we're gonna be able to see activity that way and more of it.
Okay.
And I believe the electricity was unhooked down at the gun club, just for reference, because they thought they could come and plug in and do charge a phone, charge of this, charge of that. So anyway, those are the things that. have been
Without a
done.
charge.
Without a charger, yeah. But that's all, we do have a new QR code and it's all solved.
Good. I've seen a lot of campers down there, but I didn't know if we were renting yet or not. Are we?
Oh, yeah, we've been.
Okay, good. Any announcements?
Jean just reminded me, we have a cleanup this Saturday from 9 o'clock till whenever, like a city cleanup. We're all meeting at Molly and Friends. She'll provide garbage bags. Probably want to bring your own gloves. And then we're just all gonna disperse, pick up trash around town, take pictures, put it on Facebook,
Okay, is it,
chit chat.
Kurt,
Grab a
is that
coffee.
what Public Works used to do?
No, this is just.
Oh, this is their.
This is
oh,
just.
The
Small Business
downtown.
Alliance is
Oh,
doing
okay,
it,
okay,
but
okay.
we're hoping that lots of people will come out and join us.
Boy, I sure miss the gal from the Lutheran Church. What was her name? That would ramrod that for us for 2 days? Vi Hill. Boy, miss her. So,
Do they have a phone number they can provide in case somebody calls us?
uh,
Are they only picking up city trash or are they hauling
Y-
stuff away?
you hauling anything or just picking up trash?
Just picking up trash and throwing it.
So you don't have a phone number to go pick stuff up like bio had that? Okay, all right. Call Matt. Okay, no other announcements? We're adjourned.